Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast, all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is Kansas State head women's golf coach, Stu Burke. A native of Scotland, Stu played his college golf at Lindenwood University, an NAIA school in Missouri. He's been successful at every stop in college coaching. Everywhere he's been, the team has gotten better. His Lady Wildcats this fall earned 2 top 3 finishes, including a victory in the Power Cat Invitational. All of this success has led the team to its highest ranking in school history at number 30. Stu's success has led him to being named co-coach for the international team for next summer's 2025 Arnold Palmer Cup. His dreams for Kansas State women's golf are amazing, and as you'll hear, his coaching philosophy is inspirational. I hope you enjoy the listening. Okay, all you Better Than I Found It listeners, join me in welcoming Kansas State women's head golf coach Stu Burke to the podcast today. Stu, I really appreciate you taking time out of your Christmas break to be with me on Better Than I Found It.
Thanks, Coach. Great to be here. Really looking forward to having a good chat.
Love hearing the Scottish accent. How much of your Scottish accent has left you since you spent all this time in Kansas?
Yeah, that's certainly certainly something that I get teased about when I go back home. But you can switch in and out pretty quickly. You don't want to. I don't want to be sounding like this in front of my buddies from Scotland. That's for sure.
Okay, but you can switch back over to a real proper Scottish accent when you need to.
Oh yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, perfect. Well, listen, Merry Christmas to you and your family. I know this podcast will basically go live the day before Christmas Eve, so on the 23rd. Will you be traveling or will you be in Manhattan?
No, we'll be at home. It's going to be nice to spend a Christmas at home and not be on the road or recruiting or traveling anywhere. So looking forward to see my little girl open up some of her presents under the tree. So see if she gets that Wildcat unicorn she's been looking for.
Is that little Effie, right?
Yeah, that's Effie, 100 miles a minute for sure. So
how old is she now?
She is 4. Just learning something new every day, which is really cool as a parent to see and just see her developing into her own little personality.
Yeah, Christmas, big time for a 4-year-old for sure. You mentioned being at home, not recruiting, and obviously we've got some recruiting windows now where you can't go recruiting. But I can remember I was telling a young coach the other day, Mike Holder used to send me to the Doral Publix Junior on December the 18th or 19th, and I would come home on December 30th. My wife and I spent Christmas Day on Miami Beach. She did that for 3 years, and she decided she wasn't going back. Three Christmases in Miami Beach, but I'm kind of thankful I don't have to recruit on Christmas Day.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot. I think that the recruiting calendar added on to the women's side certainly helped. You can be a little bit more selective and decide what tournaments you really need to be at. And I think, family is so important. So getting to spend some time at home with loved ones over the break is, certainly a priority for me now.
Perfect. Well, before we get too much further into this, I want to say, I knew who you were. In fact, you just reminded me that we met in person one time at Colbert Hills in 2014, but we haven't seen each other basically since, and we don't cross paths very often. And it was really Jay Goebel, our women's coach here at Baylor, who said, Coach, you really need to think about Stu Burke at Kansas State. And I said, okay, yeah, he's been successful and they're already good in a very short time, but why? And he said, well, let me tell you. And then he kind of went through some things. And that's when I contacted you. But this morning he texted me the following. He says, let me tell you a little bit more about Stu. And I said, okay. And he said, he's really, really competitive and he's motivated to succeed no matter what. A lot of people have told him that it might be tough to be successful at Kansas State, possibly. I know Grant Robinson was told that when he got to Kansas State 10 years ago, and he's done a great job on the men's side. He said, but safe to say it's that he will be a success there. He's empathetic. He's been around the game his whole life, and he knows the ups and downs that talented golfers go through, male or female. But one other thing about him is he's funny. He's got a great sense of humor, and he keeps it light for whatever team he's a part of. So, do you agree with Jay's assessment of you as a coach?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. Jay Goebel, I've been lucky enough to have some pretty great mentors in my coaching career, and Jay's been one of them. Somebody I can always kind of reach out to and ask questions, and I know I'll get an honest answer. I know this is a competitive arena, but he's certainly been somebody that's always had my best interests at heart, and somebody that I really value a true friendship. I'd go as far as saying he's my best friend in coaching. So.
That's great. Well, he was obviously his suggestion, and I trust Jay. He's given me several suggestions on the women's side because obviously I don't know the women's coaches as well. And whenever I do have a women's coach on there, a lot of times it was Jay's suggestion. And so he did mention that to you. So he said you have a great sense of humor. You keep it light a lot of times. How important is having a good sense of humor to you? I used to have an incredible sense of humor when I was young and not jaded and not calloused and not, I was, you just, you get older and maybe you lose your sense of humor. I don't want to, but do you think it's really, really important?
I think it is, and I think I'm a little bit of the reverse of you because, when I started, this was everything. This was, every round was the U.S. Open, every tournament was the Masters. Everything that we did, it was, attention to detail. Everything had to be, well prepared for, and as you grow and you learn, and you're around great players and you're around different personalities, you realize it's only golf. And when you take that attitude out there and, you recruit players because they're great players, and all that you ask for them is that they show up, they work hard, they keep their grades up, and they're good human beings and teammates to other people. So I think that allows it to be, funnier. And we like to talk about some of the horror shots we've seen at dinner, whether it's by us or other teams. And it kind of lightens the mood a little bit. It humanizes everybody that's on the team.
Yeah, well, I honestly do think I still have a pretty good sense of humor, especially for a guy who's been doing this for almost 39 years. But it's great to hear that a young coach who's very motivated, who wants great results, who wants to build a great program, all that still has a great sense of humor. And Jay said I would enjoy this interview. So let's talk about your fall results. You guys just had a pretty good fall, and actually the highest ranking in the history of Kansas State women's golf. You finished the fall ranked 30th. You won the very first tournament, the Power Cat Invitational at Cobra Hills. You finished sixth at the Sooner in Norman, Oklahoma, fifth at the Blessings in Arkansas, and second, two consecutive runner-up finishes, one at Highlands Ranch in Colorado and the other in Hawaii at Kapolei. That's a pretty good fall. Most people would be very, very excited about that, but you've got to be particularly excited considering it's basically the best fall in the history of the program.
Yeah, I mean, we were obviously happy with how we played. We played well in spells. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. We played well for 36 holes or 45 holes, and the second place finishes were really cool for me to see because our girls were really, really disappointed. We flew straight to Denver from Arkansas, and it was tee times, we were the last game off, and we were 9 over through the first 9 holes and in dead last place.
Wow.
And my assistant coach came over, two of the holes crossed, and she said, what did we do? And we just decided we would ride the cart for a few holes and just watch. And they seemed to get it together. And then they had a massive round the second day. And, we ended up losing by one. We had some chances coming in. We just couldn't convert. So I think that's the coolest thing. You've gone from, year one where the team was really pumped and happy to finish in the top half of the field to, they're trying to win tournaments now. And that's the mindset. So that's a really rewarding thing to see as a coach, to get the buy-in, and see them upset with great performances.
That's incredible. I mean, I've followed college golf for a long, long time, been involved for a long time. I know Kansas State's never had a program that was as strong as what it is now. So I know you're really, really got to be excited about how things are progressing. But going back a little further before you were even a coach, how does a kid growing up in Scotland end up playing NAIA golf in St. Charles, Missouri? I mean, how did this happen? That's a long way away from home.
Yeah, it was kind of strange recruiting process for me. We got down to a couple of schools, and one school that I decided I wanted to go to was looking at dropping their golf program, and I got a call from Lindenwood, and the coach said, "Hey, come on down. You can play here. I got a spot for you. I got a big scholarship." And um, at that point, I just wanted to make a decision and go somewhere. I'll be honest, I had no idea what NCAA Division One, Two, Three, NAIA junior college was. Um, and that's how I ended up there. Sight unseen, got on the airplane, flew over, spent about 25 minutes looking for the coach at the airport. He'd shaved his mustache off, so I had no idea who he was. And, the rest was history, I guess we'll say.
Yeah, well, a good friend of mine who was my volunteer assistant coach, Colin Carstens, is now he works with the men's program there at Kansas State, and they have just done an amazing job there. But Colin told me, I said, so what should I talk to Stu about? And he said, oh, there's a lot of things. He did mention the good sense of humor. He said, but he and I played for against each other, rival schools in NAI golf. And he said, I kept on looking at Lindenwood. He said, I think they've got 30 players on that team, a 30-man roster. Now, surely he is exaggerating. That's hyperbole a little bit. How many were on your roster?
Oh, Cullen would never exaggerate. I think we probably had. He may have been right. At one time, we may have had 30 players, but we were probably sitting around 20 most of the time. And we used to say we're not a team, we're a gang. So it was kind of there was a lot. It was cutthroat. You didn't miss a workout. You didn't miss practice. You had to work hard to get on that team. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun, and it led me to where I am now. I'll always be grateful to Coach Ellis for that opportunity that he gave me, and those other 29 guys for toughening me up over 4 years.
That's an amazing, I mean, 30. I just can't even imagine when we have 11 on the team. I think that's pretty large. And you have currently, I think, 7 on your women's squad. So I don't know if that's affected. Could you imagine coaching 30 females on the same team?
No, we had 11 at Tulane at one point, and that was tricky. That was very tricky, but I think nine's a nice number. I think the NCAA got it right with roster limits that, you can have 2 groups of 3 working with the coaches and 1 group working on their own, and, rotate and do whatever you like, or have it different days. So I think 9's about perfect, but, 7 right now is a lot of fun because everybody gets some individual time with the coaches.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's talk about experiences. You've had 4 coaching experiences thus far. One was a stint, and that's actually where I met you the first time. I guess you were just pretty new to Kansas State, but 2014 through 2017 as the assistant coach to Christy Knight, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And how did you get hired initially?
So I was working in Scotland. I had a recruiting service, and we kept it small. We had a small group of elite players from across Europe that we just it was kind of one in, one out. We knew exactly what the business model was, and I actually had a disagreement with one of my business partners about growing the company. I felt we were growing at a nice rate. It was nice and organic, and they wanted to make it bigger. So with that being said, I was talking to actually Jeannie Sutherland, who's the head coach at Nebraska, but she was at SMU at the time, and she was telling me, she was worried about her assistant leaving, and I off the cuff just said, "Hey, if David leaves, I'll come be your assistant." Um, and she called me later that evening and said, "Hey, are you really truly interested in getting into coaching?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I am. I had decided that, maybe if the business was going to go the other way, then, I it was probably my time to sell up and get out." And, I got a call from Coach Knight about a week later. And I was actually going to a wedding in St. Louis. Just so happens, a couple of days later, and, came over, saw the campus, saw the university. I'll be honest, don't remember a thing about it. I was just so excited about the opportunity and possibility, and really enjoyed my time talking to her. And the team had finished last in the Big 12 by quite a long way, so that was appealing as well. I like a challenge, and from there we went through the visa process, and Coach Knight made the decision to hire me.
Well, that was a turning point in your career, obviously, because you weren't even in coaching, and I mean, Power Five conference jobs on the men's or women's side are really rare. They're hard to get. You don't usually get them as your first job, so that's a pretty good start right there. And you spent 4 years at Kansas State, and then you left and went to Southern Cal as an associate head coach. So, do you think? Well, let's see. Do you think at any point in time when you were the assistant coach at Kansas State, you thought, boy, I'd love to be the head coach here one day? Did you ever think that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I love the people here. I love the department. Our support staff were completely in on our sports. That the town is, they're all about K-State. Our golf facilities are world class, and I knew that in time, that may be a possibility, but I also knew that we'd improved the program to the standard that we had, and it was going great guns, and I wasn't looking to leave. But when the opportunity to go to Southern Cal came about, it was kind of too good to turn down. You don't get many opportunities to go to what I would say at the time was the top assistant job in the country.
Oh, definitely. And I think what Andrea Gaston had done before, and then Justin Silverstein following, has been amazing. But talk about your experience there, and what are the things that those two coaches, because you were still a young coach, what were the main things you learned during that experience? You guys, I know, made match play at least 3 of those years, and maybe semifinals twice and quarterfinals once. Incredible run, obviously. What'd you take out of that experience?
I mean, I think what Andrea did really well was she was great at handling the big personality. She knew how to recruit players. And I remember sitting in on a recruiting call one time, and I was thinking, this is not going in the direction I thought it was going to be. I thought the player would be way more excited that they were talking to coach, and she just kind of in the middle of the call managed to flip it. And from there, I was really, really impressed with what she was able to do. Um, the day-to-day stuff, she was really good organizer. She was a really good manager of the team. She really took the reins off me. She let me teach when I needed to teach. She let me coach when I needed to coach. She trusted my eye as a recruiter. After our first year, we lost. It was in our second year. We only had 3 players on the team in December, with players turning pro and going to the LPGA. So we reloaded, and still made it to the Final Four that next semester with 3 first semester freshmen, a freshman, and a sophomore. Now, yeah, they're Southern Cal, they're world class players, but the inexperience of those players and to be able to do that was probably the most remarkable thing I've ever seen.
Well, I don't think I've ever heard of that. I've heard of getting one mid-year transfer that kind of put a shot in the arm for a team, but not 3 when you started with 3 players to do that and still make it to the Final Four. That's incredible. So how long was Andrea Gaston there when you were there, and then when did Justin take over?
She was there for 2 years with me, and then she actually left after my second year to go to A&M. And I'll be honest, it was a big shock. We'd sat down after nationals, and we'd had breakfast together, and there was a lot of big jobs open. And I would have liked to have at least applied and been in the mix for some of them. And I'd said to her, like, look, I'm really happy here. I think we've done an incredible job this year, and uh, I'm really looking forward to the future years. And she was like, so am I. This is the most fun I've ever had. This team's awesome. And then a week later, she was gone to A&M, and that for me, that was pretty hard to take. I don't think when she told me, I dealt with it maybe as well as I should have at the time. I was pretty disappointed after that.
Was her leaving and going to A&M a surprise to you? Not just a surprise, but did it seem like it fit for her? I mean, because she was a West Coast gal all along, recruiting West Coast kids, then to be thrust out here in the middle of the Texas seemed like an odd move for her.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was a good move. But she's a great coach, and she'd seen Melissa Llewellyn do it at, go from ASU to Auburn and really turn that place around. And um, it just for me, I think what stung the most was, I was looking forward to some great years after that with her. We just, there was real momentum coming in after that season. Our working relationship was great. We had a really great group of girls. We were adding a couple of good girls as well, and the future was really really bright. So for me, it was kind of different because you kind of plot out your future a little bit, and then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you're like, oh, what do I do now? What you go into protection mode. Like, what do I do now? Uh, am I going to have a job? Because who knows? If they hadn't hired Justin, it might have been a different story. So
Well, tell me about Justin. I knew Justin from his days when he was at Arizona, I think as a volunteer assistant. I don't think he was doing too much with the program, but I did get to know him at that point, and he was on the men's side. So, talk about Justin. He's been enormously successful there at Southern Cal.
yeah, I mean, Justin came in. It was his first head coaching position, which I know is tough. He knew the players on the team because he'd previously been the women's assistant. To say, we butted heads a little bit in the beginning, just different way of doing things. And I will give him his credit. I learned a lot from him. I just decided, right, hey, this is your team, this is your program, and I'm here to learn a different way of doing it, and learn some real good stuff. He was big into the decade style stuff and green speed, and very very data driven, which was a little bit different from anything I'd ever done before. Obviously, I'd kept stats and looked at stats and analyzed stats before. So, seeing somebody that was so driven on, just plain numbers, was kind of a cool experience for me to see. And, we again, you're walking into dream situation. You got a perfect team and a good roster. And, he's gone on and done a phenomenal job since then. And Southern Cal do a lot with a little. I think they really do an incredible job given the access to the courses and the difficulty in LA to travel, etc. So
Very much so. So you spent 1 year with Justin. You guys had some success that year for sure. And then the Tulane job came open. You were there for a few years and had some success. You guys won your women won the American Athletic Conference Championship in 2022. But it was something that happened right before that that was pretty devastating for a program. Talk about that experience at Tulane.
yeah, we were actually on our team retreat, and we left, and the Sunday night a hurricane hit New Orleans, and it was meant to be a Category 1 or Category 2, and it ended up being just before a Category 5. So there was some flooding in the city, but the biggest problem, they were prepared this time. Obviously, having gone through Katrina, they knew what they were doing, but it knocked the power out in Uptown where the university was. So we managed to come home on a Tuesday, and we managed to pack up some stuff, and back we went to the retreat. We worked out at Southern Miss's weight room. We played their golf course. We really had carte blanche for 5 or 6 days, and then the department moved everybody to Birmingham, Alabama, and we had a top golf right across the street, but really nothing else planned there. And, my assistant and I kind of pulled together some golf courses, some practice facilities, and we did the whole fall there, I think. And on when we left for our last tournament, we came home after that. So that fall was pretty wild, to be honest. We were in a hotel in Birmingham, Alabama for 5 weeks. So.
Hmm. Wow. I interviewed Tom Shaw, who was the men's coach at Tulane during Katrina, and he talked about how they basically moved to Dallas, and SMU kind of took them and adopted them and helped them through the program. But he talked about all kinds of people that had to jump in there and help. You obviously weren't quite as displaced as they were, because they ended up actually dropping men's golf at the time, and but it obviously didn't. It couldn't have helped a bunch. That had to be quite an interruption. And then something great happened that spring.
Yeah, we actually brought in two players in the spring. One was meant to come in the fall, and then with the hurricane hitting, it kind of put the brakes on that, and she decided the spring was a better option. And we had a good spring. We had some really good results, and I just remember sitting at the airport on the way to the conference championship, and one of the girls said, "Hey, how do we go to regionals?" And I was like, "Well, you better win this tournament if you want to go." And she just looked dead at us and was like, "Okay." And again, we were like 26 shots back after the first round, and we hadn't played good the first round. We got off the slow start, and then we put two really, really good rounds together, and we were in the 4, 5, 6 group. And I hadn't looked at the scores all day. My assistant texted me. I was on 17T with our one player, and my assistant texted me, and she was like, Cleo just made a 25-footer on the last for par. And I was like, okay, good. What are we at? And she's like, dude, we're leading. And I looked at I pulled the score out, and my player wasn't even counting. So our score was already in the house, and I knew those last 4 or 5 holes were the toughest on the golf course. And we were in the house, and we were tied for the lead with UCF and I think Houston at the time, and I knew they would drop shots coming in. It was inevitable if you looked at every other day. But I must have worn a hole in that carpet in the clubhouse, walking around in circles until they told us it was over.
I don't think people in other sports, we're not scoreboard watchers by nature, because you don't really have a lot of scoreboard now with Golf Stat and all, the clipped and everything in your phone. It's different, but pushing refresh is a killer. It's because you might push refresh 20 times, and then finally it does update. And man, a lot happened during that update. I'm not a good scoreboard watcher. I'm terrible on a phone watching. I hate it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, it was very unusual that I didn't even look at the score the last day. I just, I guess I thought we are maybe a little bit too far back, and my job was to try and get our number one player over the line in that in that top 5 spot. So it was really cool. It was a cool experience.
That's great. And Coach of the Year honor, which we know coaches will always say that's a player's award because they won it, but still that had to feel really big. Being announced as the Coach of the Year had to feel really nice.
Yeah, it's it was those ladies that did it at the end of the day, and then we went to Carson Creek after that. That was our reward. So that's all.
Carson Creek. Wow, I've got a lot of memories there at that place. Did the course kind of shock the girls a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had a player get COVID right before we were meant to leave. So she had the 5 days in quarantine, and I don't think she even played a practice round, and just came in and teed it up. And yeah, I mean, hole 17, I still have nightmares about hole 17. I've coached Alison Corpus in that hole and watched the driver 5-iron to 10 feet every day, and then it was just like, oh, just hit it anywhere we can hit a second shot from off the tee. Dead 30-mile-an-hour crosswind. 17 is I never want to ever have to hit that tee shot in my life. I don't think I'll ever have to because of the redesign, but what a great hole.
Well, yeah, what a hole. In fact, that hole on the men's side with no wind, I mean, it blew 8 miles an hour one day in 2003, and it averaged 5.3. That's a bogey and a third, and bogey 0.3. And the thing about it was you'd had about a 5-iron in there, maybe a 4-iron, and there's water left, so you have to bail. So you bail right in 4 inches, 5 inches of rough, and then you chip it in the water. So guys are making doubles and triples from the middle of the fairway. Yeah, it was a brutal hole. But anyway, yes. So you had a great experience there. But eventually you made your way to Kansas State where you are today. Tell me about that process because you intimated earlier that you thought someday maybe this could be a place I could be a coach, and here you are. It's your dream job, honestly. And talk about how you got back there.
Yeah, I was just sitting on the couch one evening, and I saw a thank you to Coach Knight pop up on their, I think it was their Instagram or their Twitter or something, and um, I was kind of shocked. I wasn't expecting it. She decided that she'd had enough coaching, and she was ready for her next challenge in golf, and um, I kind of sat on it for a few days, and I was recruiting in Germany, and every single person when I was over there was, "Hey, are you going to Kansas State? Are you going to Kansas State? Are you going to Kansas State?" And I'll be honest, I was saying no because I didn't even know if I was going, if I was interested at that point. And um, I got back home, and I phoned my sports supervisor for my time at Kansas State, and I said, "Hey, I'd be really interested in the position." And he told me he was going to go to a search committee, and kept it very, thanks for your interest. This is how the job's going to be handled. And I got a call from the search committee, went through a Zoom interview, an on-campus interview. And I was actually driving to the airport in New Orleans. I was going to Spain to recruit, and the athletic director called me and offered me the job. And I I think I nearly drove off the road. I actually had to call him back. I was so emotional. I said, "Can I just have a minute to compose myself?" And you know, called him back and accepted the job. I couldn't have told you what the salary was. I couldn't have told you what anything was. I was all in from the moment they called. It's just for me, this is home. Everybody asks me what I love so much about it, and it's just this incredible place to be. It's the people, it's the environment, and it's an athletic department that supports all sports. The head football coach knows who the head women's golf coach is and who the women's assistant golf coach is, and that's pretty cool.
That's a very good atmosphere. And you've obviously, we've talked about it earlier, the success you've had since you've been there, uh, the highest ranking in the history of the school. And so all of these experiences we've just talked about, your coaching experiences and the current one at Kansas State, all of that's led to an amazing honor that you've just received here recently at the WGCA Coaches Convention. Well, it's at least where they announced it. And that is to be the co-head coach of the 2025 Arnold Palmer Cup for the international team. Talk about what that means to you. I know what it meant to me to be the captain back in 2007. So it's been a while, but that's one of the greatest coaching experiences I've had in college golf. Talk about it. I know you haven't experienced it yet, but what's it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean it's incredible to be given that opportunity. You're really leading the best 24 international amateurs against the US in the US. On a championship golf course in a professional environment. I mean, it's the Ryder Cup of college golf, and to have the opportunity to do it. And I'm actually going to be coaching against Kalen Anderson from South Carolina, who in the beginning of my career was incredibly helpful. Again, somebody else that helped me if I had a question or a query. It would spend time on the telephone with me, and that's pretty cool that I get to go up against somebody that's had an impact in my career.
I think you're going to find that as you continue to coach and go down this road, the coaching journey is that coaches are awfully helpful. We're all competitive. We all want to win. We all want to beat each other in the competition, but we're not above trying to help each other out because we know how hard this is and what we're trying to accomplish is difficult. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I will be paying attention to the results, and obviously I'll be pulling for the United States, so you know that, right? But but what an honor that is. I'm really happy for you. So you attended the WGCA convention, which is in Las Vegas in conjunction with the GCA convention. I was not able to go this year, but so there are a lot of challenges facing both men's and women's college golf, both sides. Um, what do you think the greatest challenge is? And you, as the czar of women's college golf, how are you going? What's your solution for that challenge?
I think women's college golf's actually in a really great place right now. We've had so many things sprung on us the last year. We had 500 rules sprung on us. We had a recruiting calendar sprung on us. We're talking about it. Should 500 be included in the conference championship? Should it stop before? Um, it's hard. You want what's best for the game. I think one of the things I really struggle with is, the regional tournament. It's not the top 72 teams or the in the country that play. We've got so many AQs, and we just added two new AQs. Um, and now we've got the NIT or the NGI equivalent that Lance is doing. So I think honestly, women's golf's in a really great place. We've got some really good spotlight right now in terms of the players that have come through. Rose Zhang's done an awesome job. Patty from UCLA, Lilia from UCLA, Allison from USC. They've all won major championships. So the system's obviously working. I would have liked to have seen something a little bit more doable on the LPGAU style. I thought it was a little harsh. I think, it kind of seemed to me LPGA, we do not want you out here, instead of, LPGA, we want to include you. But I understand that the gals out in the LPGA have got jobs and cards, and their own selves to look after. So that would be probably my change. I would probably, maybe guarantee one or two cards each year from college golf, or half a season. That would be
You
that
think
would.
there's any chance they would ever mirror what the PGA Tour University is doing on the men's side?
I think that's a cool system. I think that's a great way to really encourage, and you've seen the players that have come through that have done very well. And golf's not, you earn and keep yourself out there. There's some been unbelievable college golfers that have got out there and lost their card or haven't even been able to get a card. So um, I think the PGA Tour U is really interesting. I think it's a great way to, almost a tournament within every tournament you play. And I think that's a great way to help you prepare for professional golf, because every shot matters.
Well, I think it's been fantastic for college golf. The PGA Tour recognized that they were getting most of their talent from college golf, and there just wasn't a good pathway from college golf to the tour. And now there is. So, and I think tons of guys have taken advantage of it. And whether the veterans liked it or not, it's part of the reality. And those veterans, almost all of them played college golf as well. So I think it's a good thing for college golf. I think it's great for the tour as well. Uh, do you think you're more suited for women's college coaching? Obviously, you must think that, or you wouldn't be doing it. But if so, why is that? What makes you a great women's college, or what qualities are going to help you be a good women's college coach?
I think it's the same. You have to have the same on both sides. You need to have empathy, because we know how hard this game is. Um, you need to have a good understanding, and you need to listen to players. I think that's one of the most important things, especially with this generation of players. They want input and feedback. And I think as a coach, you really need to be able to connect with their instructors and have good sound knowledge of fundamentals and cause and effect. And um, these are all things that are really important, because at the end of the day, the player is really the CEO. We may own the company, but the player's the CEO, and they're going to be the ones that make the decisions whether to do what we say or not. But if you get good buy-in from any player, knowing that you've got their best interest at heart, knowing that you've got a blueprint, a plan of how you're going to make them better and how you're going to develop them, I think it doesn't matter if you're on the men's or the women's side. You need to be able to showcase that roadmap to them, and help them down it by the hand.
I agree with you. Coaching is coaching, whether it's male or female. There are a few little nuances here and there, but it's basically the same. Do you have a recruiting hack? Something that you think is really, really cool that helps you in recruiting that might help a young coach?
Oh, I guess two things. One, on travel, I would always sign up for the points and get as many points as you can because we travel so much. It's nice to get that upgrade or that, better room or whatever it is when we're on the road. And then the other one, this is maybe a little different for most people. Really, really get to know the recruit. And if you've got a kid that wants to talk to you once a week and you're really high on them, fit in a couple of extra calls. Ask the parents to hop on. Because there's nothing worse than when somebody gets to campus and they surprise you a little bit that they're nothing like you thought they were going to be. But even if they're a little different or a little off or a little, you know, at least going in. And you've got your plan made up for that. So really, really getting to know the kid. The score is only one part. Because if you get it wrong in recruiting, if you're in the P4 autonomy conferences, you're kind of stuck with them for 4 years. So I would definitely do that and have a plan if there's something that you're a little unsure of for when they get there, so that you can make their transition um, as seamless as possible, and they'll be happy and they'll shoot those numbers that you're looking and know they can shoot.
Very good advice. And speaking of advice, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received from another coach? Something that was so valuable that you either refer to it often or you use it today, or it's just a part of who your coaching DNA now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be who you are. I can't be Jay Goebel or Mike McGraw or Jeannie Sutherland or Dan Brooks or any of these great coaches. Like I have to be Stu. And Stu's changed in 10 years from who I was as a young coach to who I am now. Is obviously been coaching for over 10 years, and since becoming a father, things definitely are, your priorities are a little bit different. And I think that's probably one of the most important things. Sometimes you'll see young coaches mirroring somebody else, and that's not truly who they are. You have to be true to yourself, and you have to understand that things that you thought were super important in the beginning of your career might not be as important as you progress. So have a philosophy, write it down, change it. You'd laugh if you read my year one coaching philosophy as to what it is now. And that's been changed over the years. I sit down at the end of every season and go over. I add to it. I take it away, and just that's my roadmap for who I want to be for the upcoming season.
That's good advice. Was that advice that you've just come up with, or is that advice somebody gave you at one time?
No, our sports psych at Kansas State, my first time around, I was asking him all sorts of questions, and he asked me if what my coaching philosophy was, and I kind of stumbled over what I thought it was, and he said, write it down and bring it back to me. And as I wrote it, it kind of grew, and it went from a fumbled couple of lines to a good paragraph, and it's gone maybe to two paragraphs now. But some of those things that you thought were so important that you were going to do, and you were going to change the world, and you were going to aren't quite as important to getting the results and helping your players become better, not just players but people as well. And I think that's something I do. I still read it and I have a chuckle at it, like, man, you were reaching with some of that stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that in your first go around. But as you gain more experience, you know what's probable. You understand people a little bit better, and that's when you come up with the real things that are important to you.
Well, you've also had a lot of experiences that you've learned from, and if you haven't learned from them, shame on you. But if you've learned from those experiences, then your worldview, as it is as far as coaching is concerned, does change. It evolves. It changes big time, and you can't be anybody but who you are. And there's a few coaches that maybe are similar to you, but there's nobody like you. And you want a player to feel the same way. You as a player, you don't want to just copy what the other guys are doing. You want to learn from other people, but you've got to be your own person, your own self. And anyway, take your own personality. But definitely as a young coach, I tell guys, you need to figure out who you are, what you want, and write it down and then move forward. So exactly what you just said. I guess I've got one more thing to ask you before we finish here today, and that is, what do you really think is possible at Kansas State? Because I know that a lot of everybody has issues, everybody has limitations, everybody has challenges on every campus in the country. There's no perfect place. So Kansas State isn't perfect either. But what do you think's possible, and what are you dreaming for this program? What's your vision?
I mean, I think the big thing at at K-State is, first and foremost, we want to be competitive in the Big 12 every single year. And we did that last year, and we give it the best finish ever. So we're obviously adding teams. We're adding elite golf teams. And that's just a chance for us to really step up. I mean, you look what Jay Goebel's achieved at Baylor, and making it to a national final. And you've seen just down the road what an awesome job what Lindsay Cool is doing at KU. And these are things that motivate you. You're seeing really good coaches, improving programs, and I really want to build a golf history for this place. We don't really have one. We've not really achieved a Big 12 championship, or the match play at the NCAAs, or going to NCAAs every year. And there's always teams that that pop up and do that. You look what Greg Robertson did at Kent State, having them in the top 5 of the country. So we want to be a top 25 program. We want to be competitive within our conference, and we want to be prominent on the national stage. And we're 18 months in, and we're getting a couple of nice looks. We got some votes in the coaches poll, and that's all very nice. But just maintaining that momentum, and sticking true to who we are. We're blue collar, we're hardworking, and we want to succeed here. So looking forward to the spring season a lot.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching that unfold. And you do have, I'm looking at your schedule. You play the Puerto Rico Classic, Westbrook Invitational, Mountain View Collegiate, Yale Invitational West, Silicon Valley Showcase, and the Big 12 Championship. All of those are out west except for Puerto Rico, but that's in a tropical zone. So you're playing a lot of good, nice, warm weather, good places to go play. And then the Big 12 Championship at Houston Oaks, about an hour and a half, 2 hours from here. Have you ever been to Houston Oaks?
Yeah, we actually finished third there in the conference last year. So we're looking forward to going back. That's just an unbelievable golf course. It's going to test every part of your game. And just because we've had success there before doesn't mean we'll have it again. We need to be ready for that time to come. But yeah, we put together a nice spring schedule. We kind of go to the same state back to back. Hopefully that'll give us a little bit of an advantage or knowledge when we go back the second time. But yeah, it's definitely been a fun year so far, and we're looking forward to 2025.
Well, congratulations on a great fall. Wish you the best of luck this spring, and I'll be paying attention. And Jay Goebel told me to tell you to say hey, so he said hello, and he hopes to see you again soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much. Merry Christmas, everybody, and looking forward to a great new year in 2025.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Stu.
Thanks, Coach.